guys know who I am?
Please let me see your hands on the ground. Keep down on the ground.
David, what brought you to this book? What made you to take it and bring it as a script to HBO?
George brought me to this book.
Really?
But, yeah, this project came through George. I had been involved in actually getting Justin Fenton, the reporter, lined up to write the book because he had the job I used to have at the Sun, and I thought he was doing great coverage. I was reading it contemporaneously in the newspaper. So I hooked him up with my book agent and said, you know, go do this as a book. But I wasn't thinking about a television show. And then several months after that, maybe a year after that, George.
So George, what was so demanding in this book that you said, I want to do it and I want to do it with David?
Well, I knew the story, but and then I read the manuscript that somebody from HBO proposed that I adapt it. But as soon as I read it, I said, well, I'll do it if I can bring in David Simon and Nina Noble as my partners once again. It just made sense, and I didn't want to do it without them. And we also brought in a couple other writers from the Wire. It was a karmic thing, you know what I mean? Karma is just like, yeah. I felt like if I'm going to do a show in Baltimore again, it should be with my people, and I'm glad I did. I mean, it really worked out.
Because watching the show, I had this Wire feeling, like it was extension. It was next part of what I already saw, and I was so missing in TV. And you grabbed me, you hooked me, and you bring it again to my attention. Were you a little bit surprised that the world didn't change so much from the things that you show in The Wire to the things that you show in the new series?
Got worse. The world got, in terms of Baltimore, this level of corruption was not endemic 15 years ago when we wrote The Last of the Wire. There were certainly corruptions. There were certainly brutalities. There were fundamental problems with the drug war and with strategy, and we made those arguments in The Wire. But this is another generation removed from people who actually knew what police work was and had any incentive to do it. And the drug war is just one layer after another of disgrace, it seems. But yeah, I mean, I think in some respects, it does feel like a coda to that piece. It doesn't have anything to do with those characters. It's a different story. This is all true. But it is where the drug war was going and went, in an unrelenting fashion. So.
And you also shown in this history that some of the policemen are changed by the environment that they landed in. They weren't so corrupt in the beginning, but the environment that they have to work in changed them into bad guys, and it's pretty compelling.
Well, yeah, we actually, in speaking to some police officers, we had more than one tell us that, yeah, I went through the academy and I learned all these things and how I was supposed to act on the street and constitutional policing and so on. And as soon as I came out, they put me in with a sergeant who said, that's all bullshit. Forget about everything you just learned. I'm going to show you how to police in Baltimore. And, the system itself was sabotage these guys who were coming out of the academy. You know what I mean? It was set up to do that.
Because I think you a little bit defend them also, that if they want to survive on the streets as a police officers, they have to adapt to the environment that they are in. If not, they actually could lose their lives because they will not receive a backup from the other policemen. If I'm correct, reading the area that you are showing us.
I wouldn't go so far as to say I would defend it. It is a hard decision to swim against the rest of the fish and to do things differently. And there's a compelling nature to being in a squad with guys who've been there longer than you. But, right is right and wrong is wrong.
When you received the script and you read your parts, how did you react?
When I read the entire script, I felt it was, you know, it was painful in its own way because, you know, this is something that truly took place. When I read and learned about Sean, I felt it was tragic. His journey, you know, his life being beautiful, being one of a giving man, a man of detail, and, you know, one that like really went above and beyond to help based on the information that I received from community as well as friends and even coworkers. And then to see how his life ended, I felt that it was very tragic.
Josh?
Well, I knew the story very well just going into it because I had followed Justin Fenton's reporting very closely, and I actually struck up a kind of internet friendship with him just out of appreciation for the work that he was doing post Freddie Gray and reading all of it, you know, from where I live in New York, and just feeling, you know, incredibly sad watching what was happening to the city that I grew up in. And I think, so I knew the story intimately, and I, you know, when I knew that George and David were doing it, I just had such confidence that they were the perfect people to tell this story. And when I read the scripts, I wasn't disappointed. I mean, the scripts are just, you know, the narrative. It's this perfect kind of, I think David said, it's like a coda to The Wire, right? I mean, it's sort of like all these years later, and you know, it tells its story at a pacing that is so intricately woven, and there's so many different that are balls that are being juggled in the air, and watching how they brought all of those storylines together was really, from an actor, you're always looking for scripts that excite you, but I could just see it, and I could marvel at the genius of the writing, of the narrative choices that they were making, and also just impressive that for me, playing someone who I was, you know, concerned about how do you try to give this character some sense of humanity so that it doesn't just feel completely, you know, black and white, you know, and I think they gave me one little scene, you know, and things that I felt like, you know, that just kind of help with that a little bit, and they go a long way. And the writing was just exquisite. It was so layered and so nuanced. So I was very excited about jumping into it.
Yeah, Josh, because your character, from the actor point of view, is very difficult because you should defend him, and it's hard to do to show him and to defend this character, seeing like, listen, he knows what he's doing. He didn't think he's doing anything wrong. And how do you grab this feeling of remorse from him to show him to the viewers like he believes in what he's doing and he thinks he's right?
Well, I think that's part of what I was just saying is I think they did that in the script, right? They give you that moment where Wumne's character comes and interviews him, and you see him in his own environment in a bar in Highlandtown where he grew up, with all the locals and people he knows, the people that like him and laugh at him. And you get to hear him present to her, you know, that show me the cops that don't have, you know, complaints against them, and I'll show you somebody who's not doing their freaking job, you know? And so that point of view is not shared solely by him. There's a lot of police officers who feel that way. And in the vacuum post Freddie Gray uprising, you a lot of police officers did pull back. That's not my opinion. I think that's fact at this point. And I think so part of what the story's telling is, as that happened, you know, the officers who weren't doing that, albeit they were doing illegal things, but they were getting guns off the street as far as their superiors know. They were getting, you know, the drugs. And so they could look past some of the other things that they were doing, but they were doing the work, right? They were out there doing the work, doing it wrongly, but doing it. And that's fascinating to me that how that happened, you know, but that's what happened.
John, first my question to you, because I think you have the worst thing to do as an actor, to defend a character in your eyes, not to sell it as a bad guy. How was it to build this character?
It was yeah, look, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity. I got to learn so much and got to develop so many new relationships and learn. I just got to learn so much. I hear what you're saying, and I think right off the jump, my very first conversation with David Simon was, you know, we can't just play this guy as a monster, and it's something Ray and I talked about a bunch. You know, when you read these scripts, it's you know, there's not there's not that much in this thing that would sort of endear you to this guy. And I had no interest. I think none of us had any interest to preach or to sort of you know, come forward with some sort of a political agenda here. You know, the thing that I really latched onto more than anything else is what I said to Wayne the first time we spoke. You know, to a person, every person that I got to know that was a part of his life talked about his dedication to his sons, to his 3 sons. And that's something that I really can relate to and respond to. Beyond anything else, I know I can speak for Ray on this, is we're dads, we're husbands, and we're dads, and our families are everything. And that was something that I really share with him, and you can start building and make more human choices from that, not to ever excuse or explain or justify any of the horrible you know, evil actions that went down, but you got to humanize every character that you play, and ultimately you really got to let them into your heart and try to understand their heart. And I feel like I really try to do that with Wayne.
And Ronaldo, for you the question: how do you put from this equation your emotions, to put the side of it, to show the story without the emotions that we all have when we read this script and saw the stories that was actually true?
I didn't put anything to the side. All my emotions went into it. You know, it's complicated. You know, I grew up with a father that worked for the Department of Investigation in New York. I grew up in Staten Island, New York, and a lot of my friends are police officers. And so I have a lot of respect for what police officers do. I have a lot of disdain for some of the practices. And so just my own vantage point, my own upbringing is nuanced. It's complicated. You know, I understand what police officers go through, but I also understand what victims go through as well. And so just that alone gave me an insight into this conversation that I think we're having. I think it's a conversation. I can't take credit for the scripts. That's the brilliance of George Pelecanos, his brainchild, and David Simon, and all the writers on the show. And I think hopefully, you know, together, collaboratively, obviously with our brilliant cast led by Jon, that we were able to elevate the genre. We were able to take a subject matter that we may have seen before and present it in a way that was fresh and interesting and unique, and to allow us to have a conversation in a way that didn't feel didactic or felt preachy, but that was entertaining. We're making HBO. It's a series, right? We're in your living room,
and you did it,
and hopefully it knocks you in a way that, like, you don't realize that you're dealing with issues, right? But Wolf of Wall Street is the same thing. You're dealing with issues in a fun and entertaining way. Sicario, you're dealing with real issues in a fun and entertaining way, and I hope that this show does that. And you can feel David and George all over it. You feel, you know, we're a cousin of The Wire in a lot of ways, you know, but we have our own.
Yeah, that's what David said, that this is a coda for The Wire. And my last question is to Jon. What has to happen that you come back as a Punisher? Is there any rumor that it can happen, or is there any rule that has to do to you to come back to this character, or this chapter is closed forever?
Your guess is as good as mine, man. I'm just happy to be talking about this and doing this, and you know, that's those decisions are made in rooms I'm not invited to.
Too bad, because